Hi.
It's so great to have you.
It's
Great to be here.
Wendy's work is going to be just cycling behind us, which is actually a treat. And I wanted to ask you, how do you go from concept to these beautiful pieces? What's your process?
Well, I make these things called illustrated documentaries, and it's a combination of pen and ink drawings, watercolor paintings, and text that's all taken from other people's words. So I spend about a month or so with a group of people, hanging out, getting to know them, trying to do my best to put myself in their shoes, and writing everything they say down through conversations and interviews, drawing everything I see, and then I take their words, my pictures, and put them together to tell a story.
Does it ever get too personal? I mean, I imagine they're sharing a lot. How do you decide what's appropriate to put out there about their story and what maybe you should edit for their own sake?
So it's hard. I just want to make sure that these are these advancing?
I think they are.
They are? Yeah. Okay. They're
not.
not.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, I guess.
There you go.
So
if you want,
actually, would you mind?
Yeah.
Is that cool?
It's a lot easier.
Sorry, there's a few. Let me just say before I answer your question that everything you're seeing up here is an edited down version of one of the stories that I did about 6th Street, which, for those of you who are not from San Francisco, is a pretty rough and tumble street here downtown. And just a block away is 5th Street, obviously, but it's completely a world away. It's a totally different ecosystem. 6th Street, there's a lot of homelessness and SROs, and on 5th Street, there's a lot of shopping and tourists. Right?
I live on 7th, so I know exactly what
so
you
mean. So yeah. So that's just what you're going to be seeing throughout this thing. The editing process, to your question, is fun. It's actually the most kind of like offline thing that you've ever seen. I take all of the text that I've written down by hand in my sketchbook while I'm talking to people, and I cut it up into strips, and I put all of the pictures that I've done, which is anywhere from like 60 to 80 or so, out on my studio floor, and then I take each piece of paper and I edit it like old school. So they're really heavily edited, and I take about maybe 20 people's voices and boil them down to one singular narrative.
Wow.
So all of them are first person.
Wow.
But does that mean one person, or is it like a persona that represents everyone that you talk to?
Yeah. That.
What is your goal with your work?
For the viewers, it's to take people out of their everyday life and context and get them to be able to walk in somebody else's shoes, to start to empathize with a group that is not their own, to maybe start to notice things that they wouldn't otherwise see while they're outside of their environment or maybe in their own environment. And then my goal for the people who I actually am working with in this, because I collaborate with every single person that I spend that time with, is that most of these people's stories don't get told. These are not mainstream stories. It's stuff like 6th Street at San Francisco Public Library, the farmers at farmers markets. They rarely get to see their stories out in the world. And so these get published online, made into books, or as installations in galleries. And there was one time, somebody who you're going to see up here, his name's Big Face, he came to a gallery opening and he saw his face in this installation, and it was so amazing for him to be validated, and to see all these people getting so excited about his experience, his life experience. People were taking pictures of him standing next to his drawing, and that is a huge impact.
Your work really does transcend the drawings. It really does. So what is the work? And it's beyond the drawings. I mean, there's even more to it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Do you mean like the work behind the work?
Yeah, when we were talking on the phone last month, you made this comment about it's not about the drawings.
It's about the process?
Yeah, well, or it was about what comes out of the drawings and the effect it had on the people that got to see the work.
Yeah, I guess that's really hugely important. I mean, my background is in illustration and art and advertising, but it's in social work, and so that, I think, informs the purpose of a lot of this, and that is the tenets that I bring to the process, and hopefully the outcome is in that area as well.
Well, I think your work, what it spoke to me was like, I'm an architect, so I always think of sense of place, and I can actually feel myself transported in your work. So that sense of place. And so that's kind of what I was like, what am I feeling? It's evoking something. So, you know, I know that you're talking about what's going on underneath it, the storytelling of the people, but I do think you reach even further. And I can't put the words on it, so I thought maybe you could.
That's so nice. I don't know if I can put the words on it either, quite honestly. I mean, for me, it's really, I feel very lucky to have the experience that I have while working in this way with people. And then it's a lot of fun to have people respond so well and deeply to it. But I think that's not about me, it's about people slowing down. A lot of these things are seen online, and so we have this like constant barrage of information coming at us, and because this is water, I mean, it's clearly like somebody sat there and drew it. It's hand done, it's a slow pace, all the text is handwritten. You literally have to slow down, and it takes you out of that rapid, way of being we all are in right now, and experience another person's world through their eyes for a minute. So if that's working, it's working. Great.
How do you choose where to go document next? Do people come to you with ideas, or?
They do. They have. Not at first. Now people are suggesting things, but even the first ones, actually almost all of them have come through suggestions. The first one I ever did were do you guys know the chess players on Market Street?
Oh, nice.
A bunch of guys who sit out there. And, I was always curious about what their story was, and so that was my first one. It was just, I've always wondered, so I started hanging out there. And then after that, I think somebody suggested the guys who swim in the bay at the Dolphin Club. And then somebody said, have you noticed so many people are homeless at San Francisco Library? Like, that would be an interesting story. So anyway, people start suggesting. One thing leads to the next.
Do you have a list, like at home, of the next stories, or?
I have, like, in here. Yeah, if anybody has any suggestions. Yeah.
Nice. And so far, they're all around San Francisco, obviously, because you spend so much time. Is there a mechanism or an opportunity for you to reach out of this geography and spend that kind of time, or is it just not work with your process?
I've actually worked overseas quite a bit,
okay.
And my first experience where I had to really remove my own self from a situation and work with and design and make stuff for other people was in a very different context. I find it very, even more challenging to actually work in our own environment because we have to re-examine everything we see every day. So I love working in San Francisco for that reason. But yeah, you can do this anywhere. I've done a story about a guy who sits in a little shack on top of a mountain watching for fires in Oregon. So there's a story everywhere, anybody.
Is there any commonality between these stories? Is there like a zeitgeist that you see? You're for the most part spending time with a lot of people that they're not our clients. They're not necessarily our closest friends and family. Do you see any commonality between these different groups? Do you see any trends or anything in the zeitgeist that you wouldn't see otherwise?
I think maybe not about them, but it has informed me. The same thing happens every time, and I bet everybody in this room has experienced it with their work. I go into a story thinking I know what the story is going to be, and then within a few days it's shot. My ideas, they were about what I was interested in, what I thought it was going to be, and what I think about a person. It's always wrong. And then if you really learn to listen to what people are telling you, that their stories, it's so much better than I could have ever imagined. So that's happened with everything.
That's not bad advice for designers anyway.
Yeah.
It's not about us. At least designers don't want to make change.
So when you're telling these stories, I'm going to follow up on that zeitgeist. Are you seeing a trend in the sense of some of the storytelling you're doing, not just what you want to do? So if you go out and you say, okay, I'm doing a story here now, I'm doing a story here, and you start to see these patterns in the stories to some degree. They're very different, of course, but are you starting to see a pattern?
There's always an arc in that sense in the actual way. I mean, that's in every story. If it's successful, there's an arc to it. So there's those patterns. I mean, I have an interest in people's stories that I'm not going to hear anywhere else. So I think there's commonality in that.
I work with artisans, and so all over the world, and I'm starting to work with U.S. makers. And I find that there's I was surprised, like you were talking about. I didn't know I'd hear a similar story after working with someone in Guatemala or someone in Cambodia, that I would actually in Oakland or Austin, Texas, or Detroit hear a it's a very different story, but a very similar story. If that makes,
Oh yeah.
And so I was surprised by that. And when you talk about being surprised and being humbled, and I just was. I'm only in a certain niche, but you're broader. And that's why I thought maybe we're seeing more patterns.
No, I think there's really no difference between any of us. We're all just looking. It's like Maslow's hierarchy, but basically we're all looking to connect. That's it, And that this is a great way. I'm so lucky to be able to give people the opportunity to connect with other people.
Well, and thank you for coming and connecting with us and sharing your work. We do have to move on. It's a little short snippet, but I really urge you to go to Wendy's website or go look online at the stories that she's told in these other websites. It's really beautiful. And look for them, for those of you in San Francisco, look for them when they're going to be in physical galleries and spaces where you can interact with them, not maybe from the screen.
Yeah, there's a permanent installation or semi-permanent installation at Intersection for the Arts, which is actually at 5th and Mission, and this piece is installed thoroughly. It's a big piece, and it's up there now, so if you guys are around.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.